Kel asks, hey guys, love the pod. Just some food for thought. Is the health of college football better now than it was 15 to 20 years ago with the BCS bowl system? Or do you think the playoff has been better for the sport? So the health of college football, are we in a better place, a healthier place now than we were with the BCS and the bowl system? And what do we want to say is like the peak BCS? Because I thought that was an important part of this. BCS starts in 98, runs until 2013. When I think about the BCS era, I'm mostly calling it the early 2000s. Is that the way that you all would approach this?
I would call it the 1998 to 2013 era.
All right, fine. All right, so Tom, tell me, are we in a healthier spot now than we were back then?
I mean, it kind of depends on your definition of healthy, doesn't it? Like I don't know what, like if you're talking financially, hell yeah, it's a lot healthier than it was during the BCS era because everybody's making a lot more money than they had been, and the TV deals just keep getting richer and richer. As for the sport, I don't know. I think that's just kind of it's a difficult question to answer. I would say it's about the same, except for the money.
Yeah, I mean, you had a lot of different teams win in the BCS era, but you also had like incredible SEC dominance in that era that we have not completely seen in the playoff, although it's certainly continued somewhat. And the last three obviously have been, from the SEC. There's so many aspects to evaluate the health of the sport. Is it healthier now for players? I think so. Yeah. Is it healthier now for coaches?
No,
probably not. But that's also not necessarily related to salary. For sure, it's healthier. Yeah. I mean, the money has exploded, but it's not. I don't know that is necessarily fully playoff related as far as the health. The other aspects like the portal and things they don't like. Those are sort of independent of the playoff. I would say overall, I don't really like how the playoff has gone because I feel like it was a half measure, right? It was trying to like we got the playoff because of LSU Bama. And because we wanted to keep all the bowl people happy who kept greasing all these conference officials, they went to a 4-teamer instead of something that is a little more representative of the whole sport.
I'll say worse because and this is almost projecting in the future a little bit, and but I hope we can fix it. I mean, it really feels like it's been more regionalized than ever with the dominance of the SEC coming up. I mean, thankfully, the Big Ten has produced multiple, options. Ohio State, Michigan. We saw Michigan State make the playoff. But look around elsewhere. I mean, it's been one team primarily from the Big 12 in Oklahoma. The Pac-12 has been irrelevant the last 4 or 5 years. Looking back over those lists, USC was, in the mix. At least Oregon with Chip Kelly was there. Like, it just felt like nationally the sport was healthy. And I think it's interesting because I think if you're an SEC fan, you're probably thinking, no, the sport's great. Like, it's awesome right now. But I think as far as the overall health of the sport, I'd say it's a little weaker than it was. And the reason I ask, because yesterday we talked a lot about NIL future, when the pay, all the future. And, looking through our comments and listening to callers on the radio show and tweets, there's a lot of people that are upset with NIL and like, oh, this is ruining the sport. And I don't understand it. And I almost feel like if you asked a poll, they would say it's ruining the sport, but they would still tune in to watch it because they love college football. So I don't know if I pay too much attention to that, but there is a very real undertone that comes, and it's probably people over the age of 40, maybe. Maybe it's a little bit younger than that, but I'd say over 40, they're kind of really used to amateur athletes that are pushing back. I don't think they go away, but transfer portal, I think they don't love that. Like, hey, that was supposed to be our guy. So there's some things that concern me, but we had NIL last year. We had transfer portal last year, and I think we had the best college football season we've seen in 20 years. So there's a concern that's in the back that I look at it. I'm kind of worried about it, but I think we're in a good spot moving forward. I hope we are, but there are definitely some concerns.
Yeah, and I think Danny brings up a good point there. Because, as far as is the sport healthier, probably depends on where you are. Because if, like you said, if you're the SEC, hell yeah, it's healthy. Everything's great. Everything's fine. We're making more money. We're winning. If you're the Pac-12, there's absolutely no way in the world you can argue that the sport is healthier than it was during the BCS era. If you're the Big 12, you can't really make that same argument because you've kind of just became Oklahoma's conference during the playoff era for the most part. Because if we think back to the BCS, since then, the Big 12 has lost Missouri, Texas A&M, Nebraska. It's going to be losing Oklahoma and Texas soon. There's no way in the world the playoff has been healthier for the Big 12. The Pac-12 has been shut out of the playoffs since Washington was in it. There's no way in the world that it has been healthier for the Pac-12. You could argue the same thing for the ACC, although I don't pin that blame on the playoff as much as the ACC's TV deal. So I don't think I don't know. I guess I'm coming to the conclusion. No, I don't think the sport is healthier under the playoff than it was under the.
I don't think it has to do with the postseason format.
That's what I was going to say.
I think the sport is very healthy right now because the players are better than ever, and the innovations that we've had within the sport, offensively, and then the counter defensively, the way that it's become even more positionless and versatile, I think makes it a more entertaining product to be able to watch for fans at home. I think the way that now the national we are obviously a national podcast. Some people decry, why do we keep making a regional sport a national sport? I believe that is a very fair argument and an interesting discussion when we talk about college football. But the fact that you can recruit from all over the country, like it's not just Notre Dame with the national recruiting footprint, it's Alabama with the national recruiting footprint, Ohio State, like everybody can get players from all over the country. I just think that the product itself, not everybody.
The playoff teams can get anybody from all over the country. That's the problem. That's where it's like, I get what you're saying, but as far as the overall health of the sport, yeah, the players are better than ever. The problem is they're all on the same 6 teams. They're all going to the same schools. And now with the transfer portal and the freedom of movement, players that don't start out at those schools are being funneled toward those schools. So it's a really difficult question to answer. There's plenty of arguments for yes, it's healthier in some ways and it's unhealthier in other ways. And we're just going to have to figure it out and adapt to it.
It's also really difficult to separate the playoff era and the BCS era, which we can evaluate separately from were the things in this era caused by, the postseason format. Mm-hmm. Like the playoff did not cause USC to make 3 ridiculous athletic director hires in a row. And the Pac-12 cannot be carried by Oregon. We've seen it be tried over the last 10 or 15 years. Like, I know Oregon fans will hate me for this, and I don't really care. They're a great 2 or 3 in a league. They're a really great 3. They're a solid 2. But the Pac-12 cannot be a nationally relevant conference unless you have one brand on top. And we've already seen it. Like, they haven't been to the playoff in forever, and USC's never made the playoff. And yet, snap your fingers, make a decent AD hire, make a good head coach hire, spend the money, and they're right back. Like, they're going to be in the running for the number 1 recruiting class in the nation this year. I do really hate the 4-teamer, though. Like, I know I'm not saying that's the all the ills in the sport, but it's exclusionary without real merit, I think. And it's just, if you were designing a playoff, you would not have designed it as a 4-teamer. You only did it to appease all the bowl folks, I think.
Was that the only reason?
Well, I think it was one of the major reasons. I mean, I know they kicked around their models, but like the Bulls have had their fingers in the jar for so long that it's just, you've seen how long it's taken to get away from some of these bowls.
Also, like, let's not forget too, when they created the 4-team model, the Bulls played a huge part of it, but we were also at that time, like, we were hurtling toward the era of 4 super conferences, the SEC, Big Ten, they're all, so it's like, that was like, I can't help but believe that played a part in choosing 4 teams, because maybe there was some thought like, hey, it'll just be the champions of our 4 super conferences every year.
It's a very, very good point. Do you think that the health of the sport can be changed by college football playoff expansion?
Yes. The future, the health of the sport?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we go to 12, for sure. I think it brings in a lot more players. I don't think it changes the outcome. Like, I think Bama, Georgia, like the same teams are going to win the national championship. Maybe you see an upset, every 10 years, you see some sort of flyer. Cincinnati, I think if they had a more dynamic quarterback, maybe they would have had a more realistic chance. But you bring in the Pac-12, which I think instantly helps. You bring in more teams and more fan bases. And I do think that helps recruiting. Like, I think that's going to be a challenge. I know everybody's automatic Lincoln Riley's in. If he wins early, I think it'll help. But if you're a coach at UCLA, picking up Oregon, if I'm a player, I want to play to win championships. Despite Kayvon Thibodeau, maybe that's how they got him to go there, is pitching the brand. But I mean, you want to go to be a winner. And if you can't even get there to the party, I think it hurts them. So, I do think from the fan bases, like, it infuses more passion. Maybe people are more likely to give to a collective or something else if they feel like, yeah, you know what? We can win a championship. We can make a playoff. I think it absolutely helps the health of the sport.
I think we touched on this yesterday a little bit too, or at least I did. I think it helps the health of the sport if there are automatic qualifiers. If you don't have automatic qualifiers, all that is going to happen are the same SEC teams and same Big Ten teams will get chosen, and a few other teams from other conferences, and it's just going to continue to alienate most of the country who's not getting chosen for the playoff.
You're cool with the 6, though, right? You don't want all, like, the model they came up with was pretty solid, right? The 6 highest ranked group of 5.
Yeah, I think it just makes sense. The 5 Power 5 champs, the top group of 5 team, and then 6 at-larges. I think that just makes too much sense not to say yes to.
But theirs had potential. They didn't have Power 5 automatic. It was the highest 6 conference champions, regardless of level, which you would assume
it's probably but it's.
But I mean, if a Pac-12 team has 3 losses, it could get a little dicey. But you would think they would put them over a Mountain West champ, or
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that the odds of 2 group of 5 teams being ranked higher than a couple Power 5 champions in any given year is going to be so kind of rare that it's really not that big of a deal. But I think optically, like, Power 5 conferences will push back against the idea. Yes.
CFP and on in the future, the win by the 3-loss team was so impressive. We're going to jump them 15 spots ahead of the Mountain West champion to make sure that our Pac-12 champion makes it in on an automatic, where I'm assuming the team they beat also ends up getting an at-large scenario. Because that's what we're talking about. And the real difference between the Power 5 automatically all get their conference champs in, and the 6th highest ranked conference champs period is the scenario where there is an upset in the conference championship game, and there are also a Sun Belt, an American, a Mountain West champion that are out there that are ranked higher, right?
Yeah. And there's the other thing too, like, if you have a problem, like a 3-loss Pac-12 team getting an automatic bid, like, people will be like, oh, that shouldn't happen. If you have a problem with a 3-loss team being in the playoff, then you shouldn't want a 12-team playoff anyway, because guess what? There are going to be 3-loss teams getting in.
Oh, without a doubt. There's 3-loss teams up in the top 10, top 12 at the end of every single season. Okay. But I think that the sport's in good hands here on the Cover 3 podcast. We're just going to continue to, you know what you need? The medicine that you need, it's here on the Cover 3 podcast. That'll keep college football healthy.